Good afternoon, Tiger Bay. Manatee Tiger Bay, please have a seat. We are going to get started. Thank you all for being here. My name is Misty Servia. I am the president of Tiger Bay, and I'm very happy to see such a great crowd. If I could ask you all, please, as a reminder, to turn off your cell phones, and please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you very much. A couple of announcements as we get started. So our membership really sustains this club, as you all know, and we have many members here today. And I suspect we have some who are not yet members. And for those of you who are not members, please go and see Elaine if you would like to sign up as a member. We have a 50% off membership right now available for you. And with that, you will be able to ask questions at our club meetings. So please consider that. Also, as a reminder, for those of you asking questions, there are prizes. We will be awarding the Tiger by the Tail Award today, as we do at every luncheon, for the most engaging question. The prize is a very beautiful tiger pin and this basket of cookies, which is donated each month by Cindy Unzicker of her company, which is called Bite Me Cookies by Cindy. We really appreciate her support here every month. Also, as a reminder, METV is here each month with us, and we're so happy that they're always recording this for us. If you miss a Tiger Bay meeting, remember that you can go online to metvweb.com, and you can select their YouTube button, and you can watch any of the past programs that you've missed. So please remember that's a great resource. Thank you, Ben Bacher, to he and his committee for organizing this program today on cybersecurity. I recently attended a similar program that was conducted by the state attorney's office, and it is eye-opening, the amount of white-collar crime that we have in this area. So I think you're about to hear a lot of information you may not have known before that's going to help you in your business and also personally. The rules are simple. We have 3 panel members today. Each of them will have 9 minutes to give a short presentation. At about 8.5 minutes, I'm going to stand up if they're still talking, which is going to be their clue to wrap up. We do that to try and keep you on track and get you back to your office, so please try and help us keep on schedule. Following the presentations, we will have questions and answers by our members. So if you are a member, you can approach the mic with your question, and please line up a couple behind the mic so we don't waste any time as you travel from your table to the mic. When you get there, please tell us your name, tell us that you are a member, and ask a question. Please refrain from comments, but we are very excited to have your questions, and tell us who it's directed at the panel. So with that, I'm going to introduce our speakers, and we'll get started. To my right, we have Marc Baker. He is IT Security Administrator for the State College of Florida. To my immediate left, we have Dr. Sunita Ludwig, and she is the Instructor of Information Technology at the College of Business for USF Sarasota Manatee. And at the end of the table on this side, we have Kevin McNulty, who is the co-founder and president of NetWeave Social Networking. So thank the 3 of you for being here today, and we're going to get started with Marc Baker.
Good afternoon. I was asked to talk both on the business and the personal side about the cybersecurity. I want to start by thanking Dr. Mears and Bill Culver from the college also for being here. Bill's on our academic side. We're working on a cybersecurity degree program. The number one question I get when talking to people about cybersecurity, how can we be safe? Well, the first step is to accept the fact that you're not safe if you have an online presence. Whether the business is small or large, you're a target. And the best thing in the past with cybersecurity, the thought process was, how do we keep the attacker out? Your best mentality is really to approach it as, they're already in our network, they're already infiltrated, so how do I keep them from taking my information? I was telling Misty at the beginning, when we first met this morning, I served as a consultant for 7 years before being at the State College of Florida, and with small businesses, I always heard, well, we're just a small company. why should we worry? You have resources. Your networks can also be used as a launching point. For example, the target breach, we're all familiar with that. What a lot of people aren't aware of outside the cybersecurity community is that breach took advantage of an air conditioning company in Pennsylvania. They had about 7 or 8 employees, and that was the network that was first breached and used to infiltrate target systems. It was just a mom and pop company, probably going out of business because they're looking at fines. Some people in the community estimate in the millions of dollars. One problem we have is, in looking at it, the 3 most important things that I see, for example, at the college, I've been there just over a year. We've implemented a lot of things to give us visibility into what's going on. Our network is scanned on average 25,000 times a day. In looking at those scans, we have scans, most of it's automated systems looking for holes in the network. On average, we have about 90 countries originating the scans. So you have that kind of activity, and you're looking at that, what can we do? Number one thing that you can do is, one problem I found in working in cybersecurity for the time I've been in is an overdependence on 1 or 2 pieces of protection like antivirus. By estimates given by Trend Micro, Symantec, so on and so forth, your very best antivirus vendor is going to find 45% of the malware in existence today, which means you're depending on a single piece of security that's leaving 55% of the vulnerabilities unprotected. What are some of the most important things you could do is the number one thing you can do in looking at both at home and in a business network is patching. If you look at the data breaches just for 2015, they're 40% higher than 2014. There's a lot of talk about advanced attacks, advanced threats. At this point, the last statistic I saw was 85% of the major data breaches in the US took advantage of vulnerabilities that have been known for at least 2 years, which means patches exist, updates exist, but they haven't been applied. If you've heard about Home Depot, their data breach, it was the same piece of malware that was used in Target. There is a breach, there is a patch available. If they'd applied that patch, you wouldn't have read about Home Depot in the mail, in the news. So what can we do at home or even in a small business? If you have 50 or less computers, one of the best ways to maintain and look at patching is there's a company by the name of Secunia, Secunia. They have what's called a personal software inspector. Like I said, if you have less than 50 computers on your network, they offer it for free, and it will scan not only Microsoft, but all of your Adobe and so on and so forth. Because most of us, on a personal level, don't have the ability to scan and look to make sure, and it will actually automatically apply. So it's a very nice thing at home to do, and also for small businesses. And really, like I said, the patching is one of the biggest things. To give you an idea, the Australian Signals Directorate just celebrated 24 months without a successful data breach on their network. Probably 2 months ago is when they celebrated that. And the number one thing that they did was they created a whole team. That's all they do is apply updates and patches. And that one thing eliminated, because like I said, over 80% of your data breaches are using old malware that have the existence. What else can you do? Be careful with your online devices. One of your most dangerous pieces of technology is your smartphone. We all have them, and I find users constantly who leave their wireless settings turned on. If your wireless is turned on and you have a smartphone and you have wireless turned on, it puts out a beacon every 5 to 6 seconds. I can pick up that beacon, I can bypass your lock screen, and I can access all your data in less than 2 minutes. If you look like on our network, on average, I find 200 to 300 students on 200 to 300 devices a day on the student network that have malware on them, and so I'm having to keep that from spreading into our internal network. You shut off your wireless settings, you eliminate that. I've seen on the employee network, we can't always identify the phone because it's a personal device. And I try to track it to where it's at. I just know it's on our campus. A lot of times I can get to the building, but I can't really find but I've seen, if your phone is in standby or your device is in standby, it's still putting out that signal. And I've seen times where malware on the device was transferring data off the device while it was on standby, probably in somebody's holder or holster. It's just a simple matter of turning off the wireless. So those are just some simple tips. The patching and updates at home is something a lot of people don't think about, but that's really a big thing. The updates, making sure you turn off your wireless, thinking. It's just like anything else, like driving, there's a lot of inherent dangers, but thinking ahead and being smart about what you're doing. I think where I was woken up with, I can't do it here because I don't have permission. 4 years ago, I took my first forensics class when I was going through the certification for cyber forensics, and the instructor asked the class, there was over 100 of us in there, and they asked the class if anyone had their wireless settings turned on, and I didn't know at that time, so I raised my hand and kind of felt bad because I was probably the one with the least experience and the only one that raised their hand. And they had permission from the group, but there was a realtors group next to us, and so the instructor started pulling pictures off of people's phones that were just sitting attending the seminar. Ever since then, I don't leave home with my wireless turned on. But a lot of times that's the point of entry. These automated scans, like I said, are going on. They just scan address spaces. You see people going, I always get a sickening feeling when I go into like a Starbucks or somewhere with public Wi-Fi and see people using it. You just automatically have to assume that something's going to be inserted on your system if you're using a public Wi-Fi. Plan on scanning your device as soon as leaving, and plan on having nothing on there that you can, that you can't lose. My wife and I have gotten to the point where we have external drives. You can go to Walmart for less than $100, get a hard drive. We plug that in. Everything personal is on that. When we leave home, that stays home. We don't plug it in if we're at a public place. Some other dangers. People say, well, I'm not really a target or this or that, but it's not only yourself, but associations. Another story that I think about is about 2 years ago, one of the Fortune 50 companies experienced a major data breach. The way it happened was the CEO of the company clicked on a phishing email, which is basically where they send you an email trying to get you to click on it. But the email is unique, and attackers, they have all the time in the world to wait for you. What basically happened was they had hacked the CEO's son's school, and nobody knew it. And the son he was in an accident and at the school and had to be taken by ambulance to the hospital. The principal of the school sent an email was sent from his account, as it turned out. It had the ambulance number that picked him up, the hospital they took him to, the attending physician, and it wasn't from the school. When he clicked on it, it gave them entrance, and they were able to take over. So I will look forward to your questions at the end, and hopefully I didn't disturb you too much, but thank you.
Thank you very much. Next.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Sunita Ludwig, and I'm with USF, and we have a program in cyber security, a BSIT degree as well as a BSAS degree. We've had it for the last several years. But today we are going to talk about mobile devices. And again, mobile devices, they've really become a very integral part of our lives. I mean, we sleep with our cell phones on the side, okay? We eat and we are looking at our cell phones. We work, we are looking at our cell phones. We are whatever we are doing, leisure activities, we have our cell phones with us. When we drive, we are looking at our cell phones every stoplight, at least at the stoplight, not otherwise, okay? And, there is a lot of excitement. Every time there is a new version of the cell phone, like the iPhone especially, a lot of excitement, a lot of hype, a lot of hoopla about it. And last year, manufacturers worldwide, they shipped 1 billion mobile devices. So business is booming for Apple and for all these manufacturers. But who thinks of security? Okay. And sometimes when we are using our phones, we may think of security, and then we say, oh, well, I have Android. That's secure. Wrong. Android is not secure. Okay. In fact, some data on Android is about a couple of years ago, one of these think tanks, they did a study on the 500 top applications on the Android. 500 of them, the topmost 500. 92% were unsecured, or they had some security issues. 92% of the top 500. And today there are I would say, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of these mobile apps which are available. And not all of them are available at the App Store. Okay, they are apps available outside of the App Store, and those are really very cool, very fun, very attractive apps. But again, they are the ones with the least security, and they are the ones which are really meant to. Quite a few of them are hacker apps. Okay, so okay. So another point which I wanted to make was, the hackers today are getting very, very sophisticated. Okay, when they hack into your smartphones or any handheld device, they're really not after your data. They're not really after to get information on you. Basically, what they're trying to do is they're waiting for you to be in an unsecure environment, like you mentioned Starbucks and those kind of Wi-Fi environment, and access your company data. Okay. And most of the companies today have their data up in the cloud. Okay. So basically, what they're looking for is how you authenticated, how you were able to get in and get access to the cloud. And once, of course, they get to the cloud, it's a gold mine. Okay, that's one of the biggest drawbacks of the unsecured Wi-Fi. It's very, very, very convenient to be able to walk into these places, have a cup of coffee, relax, and get online. And it's also extremely risky. Okay. Another point I wanted to make is another great risk for companies are the employees themselves, the clueless employees. I just gave you an example of somebody just getting into a unsecure environment and logging on and kind of showing the way to the cloud to the hacker. Okay. The other one is, as you had mentioned about the updates. Okay. When we have our laptops, many times you wake up in the morning and it's like, oh, you have to restart because all these updates were downloaded. Okay. Now you have that on your mobile devices also, but not everyone is applying those updates. Okay. And even if you have a company phone, first of all, your phone has to be authenticated by the company, okay? And then not all your devices, even the company may not be aware of all the devices you're bringing to work. And so those updates are pretty much hardly ever applied, okay? And again, many of those updates are meant to secure some of the breaches, okay? And then people don't apply them, okay? Another big issue with mobile security are these payment systems. We do online banking, online shopping, okay, and now all of that is moving to the mobile environment, and that is again a very, very unsecure environment. Credit card hacking is very, very lucrative for the hackers, and they are very active in that line of business. As we saw with Target and with Home Depot and others. But now they are all moving. They're all moving towards mobility. because, again, the hurdles in their path are so few. They're getting into an unsecure environment, and it's like, like hitting the jackpot. So I, for one, never do online banking or online shopping using my cell phone. I never do that. No. It is extremely risky. Okay. And also, for companies which allow employees, bring your own device kind of is very, very popular these days. And they, basically the thinking behind that is that, okay, if I let my employee access the corporate network, you're increasing productivity. And actually, you're not increasing productivity. Productivity takes a major hit when you allow that to happen, because it's a huge distraction. Not only it's a risk, but it's a big distraction. Okay? So it's kind of a false notion that by allowing my employee to access the network, instead of having a 9-to-5 kind of employee, I now have an employee who's 24/7. Okay, and that's a fallacy. Okay, let's see. The low-tech stuff. Okay, the low-tech stuff is you lose your phone, and or it gets stolen. Okay, and you don't worry about it, or even if it's a company phone, you may take a week or two to let somebody know that you've lost your phone. I mean, you may not be aware yourself that you've lost your phone. Okay, if you haven't used it for a couple of days, then maybe you start missing it. And again, that just stealing of these devices is big business, because when they steal the devices, they can break into those devices. Okay, and again, there's a lot of information to be mined once you've broken into those devices. Okay, and again, one of the things which I would recommend is people ask me, what should we do? Well, for one thing, don't use your phone for business, okay? And also, if you have to use it, make sure that you're using it in a very, very secure environment, and not in a coffee shop, okay? And the other thing is, I think many businesses are kind of reviewing their security policies. When an employee joins a company, you have to sign a piece of paper, about liability and all that, the company is not going to be responsible for, if you do something which is illegal. Well, they need to do that with employees who bring their cell phones to work also, at a minimum. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kevin, you're next.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kevin McNulty from NetWeave Social Networking. Thanks for having us here today. It's a pleasure to come and deliver this program for you. Marc and Sunita have talked a little bit about the technical side of cybersecurity. I'm going to talk more about what folks in the IT industry call a picnic error. PICNIC stands for problem in chair, not in computer. So it's still one of the easiest ways in the world to access somebody's personal information is to get them to give it to you. So it really, you can apply all the technical protections that you want on your cyber presence, but if you're still still able to click a random phishing email, or have your privacy settings set incorrectly on a social network, then you've created the vulnerability yourself. And so that's something that you need to think about as well. Speaking in particular of social networks, since that's what we do, I can recommend strongly to everybody that any social network you belong on, you should visit the privacy and security settings and walk through each and every one of them and make sure that they are set to something that you're comfortable with. Online security is just like home security, okay? You're not, if there's a determined professional that wants something in your home, you are not going to be able to stop them. Okay, but what you do is deter amateurs. You make other people easier targets. You lock your front door. Some people go as far as having a security system, but it's a personal choice. What are you comfortable with? Do you sleep better at night spending the money on a security system, or are you fine just locking your front door? It's the same thing online. Make sure that you are operating at the level you're comfortable with. Social networks operate on sharing. And so the default setting for a lot of the activities on a social network are going to be public, right? Because they want you to share with as many people as possible because that's how they operate. So make sure you're set to where you're comfortable. On Facebook in particular now, I can speak, not every network works this way, but on Facebook, you can actually change the security setting on an individual post. So while you might have everything set to public for 90% of what you share, there might be some things you want to share with a smaller group. You can make sure that post only goes out to that group. The basic settings are public, friends of friends, which would include people you're not personally connected to, but your friends are, or friends only. But there are custom settings too. If you pull down on the little menu in the lower right-hand corner by the post button, you can pull down and set your security settings, and there's a custom setting. So you can say, I want you to show this to all of my friends except Dave, because I'm making fun of him. So you can actually do, so that's why I have no illusions that even though I'm friends with my kids, I have no illusions that I see everything that they post, because they both work for me, so they know how to set their security settings. But go through and make sure everything is set where you're comfortable. And then be careful about the information that you're sharing. And again, it's a personal choice. What are you comfortable sharing? But if I share, a picture of my great big new 52-inch plasma screen TV that I'm just so happy that I got, and then the next day I post that I'm going to Acapulco for 2 weeks, right? That might not be the smartest move in the world. So you need to be careful about what you're sharing as well as how you're sharing it. People can get information just by following you on social network, especially if your posts are public. They can find out about your kids, what you've got in your home, even your birth date. So if you're doing things like your password is your birthday, that's the first place people will look to try and figure it out, because the first things they're gonna try password, because that's the most common password in the world, so don't do that. They're gonna try password, they're gonna try 1, 2, 3, 4, they're gonna try your birthday, your kids' birthdays, right? All of those things are very common passwords, and they can find that information on your social media. So, be careful about what you're sharing and how you're sharing it. We were talking before the program about pictures. Your camera or your camera phone nowadays are smart enough to know where you are in the world when you took that picture, and they record that data. And that's helpful to you if you want to, remember where you were when you took that picture. But that information, if you have your camera or your cell phone enabled to record that information travels with the picture everywhere it goes. So if I post that picture somewhere, and somebody else can look at the metadata that's attached to that picture and find out exactly where that is. So you may be revealing things about your daily routine, about your location, those types of things. So you just want to be careful about that. We come out and we do something similar to this for schools, and we tell kids how to be smart about what they're sharing online. And it comes down to the same basic things. Not only be smart about what you're sharing and how you're sharing it, your security settings, but if you receive an email or a message, a Facebook message that seems in any way unexpected, you should always check with the sender before clicking on anything. Right? Make sure they're the ones that send it. A very common thing on social media, especially on Facebook. Again, we talk a lot about Facebook because it's the 800-pound gorilla of social media. 1.8 billion users. If it were a country, it would be the world's largest. So that's very common. And it's very common on Facebook to receive a message from a friend that seems a little odd. Like, that's not something my friend would normally send me. And this is malware that if they can get somebody to click on the link and get access to their Facebook account, now they can message all of that person's friends on the social network as the person that they originally hacked. So you don't know that it looks like it's coming from a friend, so you're inclined to click on it. If you weren't expecting it and don't know exactly what it is, send that person a message before you click on it. Maybe legit. Maybe they just found the world's funniest cat video and wanted to send it to you. Okay? But it may not be, and so it never hurts to check for things like that. Sunita was right about mobile devices. I just read a study where more people own mobile devices worldwide than toothbrushes. So it is definitely, we're talking about in the billions of people here on these mobile devices, and the trend is to go smartphone. I couldn't do business without a smartphone. That's just the nature of my business, is to be online all the time. And so we have to approach things a little bit differently. We really couldn't operate if we just said, well, we're never going to do anything on cell. We're going to do everything on desktop. We cover live events, we do things like that. So we have to be careful about how we do that, but it's just a necessary risk. Every time you leave the house, you run the risk of having your car stolen in your driveway. But if you go someplace, you run the risk of having your car stolen. But you have to weigh that against the security that you have and the necessity of the trip. And so operate in that mode in your technical life. Know what your security settings are. Be comfortable with what they are. Be comfortable that you've made necessary precautions to make somebody else a more likely target, or to make yourself a less attractive one, that you're deterring amateurs. You're not doing things like sharing your birth date or your credit card numbers or anything else. But you constantly have to weigh the risk with the benefit and make that decision for yourself. Again, it's a personal decision, and make sure you're comfortable with where you are. But most of all, make sure you know what your security settings are and how you're operating. Then you can make educated decisions about whether or not you want to undertake a certain behavior. Okay? Thanks.
Thank you very much to all of our panelists. Great job. And now is the time for questions and answers. Thank you, Davis Graham, for being the first one to step up.
I always think of Delmer and Brother Where Art Thou, when they were at the shore and they were having that baptism and he ran into the water. But it's a great visual for those that know the movie. My name's Davis Graham. I am a Tiger Bay member. We're in outpatient radiology. I'm actually working on my Master's of Science in Health and Medical Informatics at Brandeis. And I thought something that you all would enjoy sharing with the public, and I'll preview it, but is health information. The credit card goes for about $1 now on the black market, and your health information, and that's Social Security number, date of birth, your membership card, your insurance card, is being duplicated if it's stolen. And it goes for about $60 to $70 according to the most recent post I've seen. So if we could talk about that just a little bit. And then what is your all's view on single sign-on through like quantum cryptography? And this is using the light proton that they're trying to put in a chip. Are you any of y'all familiar with it? Quantum cryptography? Yes? And then maybe you could speak on that, because we're working off of a password system that really goes back to 1960 at MIT, that they were stealing passwords for share time. So healthcare and quantum cryptography. So.
Okay, so Dr. Sunita, you are going to be the one. Speaking of quantum, what is it?
Cryptography.
Cryptography. Could you please come to the microphone?
Okay, in a previous life, I was at Motorola, and this was soon after 9/11. And a company, a defense company, got in touch with Motorola because they wanted to go after all the Homeland Security contracts. And at Motorola, we had developed the little the chip, the device, where it authenticates the person. Okay, and we also got in touch with a company in Colorado, okay, which was going to do the chip development for us. I mean, we could not go to anyone outside of the U.S. It had to be a red, blue, white solution kind of thing. And we did that, and and today I see those little chips on some of the credit cards. I don't know if you have gone to the store lately where you don't swipe your card like this. You have to put it in like this with the chips going inside, and then it scans. And today, that chip is very secure. Okay, and it's all cryptography. It's just the way it is, the way the information is grabbed from the chip and the way it is read and all. It is extremely secure because, again, cryptography, if you take a look at that, if you see about it, it's actually very simple mathematical functions. Okay, and I don't want to get into any details, but it's like, to give you an example as to these are called one-way functions, and one-way functions means, like, if you have a number, say something like 56, you know what the factors are. You can say, okay, 7/8 are 56, or 28 times 2 is 56. You can factorize it. Okay, in the one-way functions, it's like, you may have a number which is like 200 digits long. I mean, how do you factorize something like that and then play with all the different combinations of those factors? So cryptography, there is different levels of cryptography. And so for the chips which are being deployed today, especially in the finance world, okay, those are highly secure. So, I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, no, and then the quantum is using the light proton, which is,
Okay.
the quantum part is using the light proton, which is has a unique character, triangulating off of that number.
Right.
So it's just that I wanted to know how close we were to implementing that into phones and into the rest of the.
Yes, but I don't know if that technology is what is being deployed when we insert our
Right.
credit card with the chip on
Okay.
it. I'm not sure of that.
No, it hadn't yet. And then health information, how
Yes.
wealthy that is on the block.
And that was very interesting statistics you shared, that the credit card information is now available $1 per credit card, and health information is like $60 to $70 per social security number or whatever. Yeah. Now, HIPAA is a big deal.
Yes.
It is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Davis. Board member, Karen, introduce yourself.
Yes, Karen Grablin. I am a Tiger Bay board member, and in my office, I'm known as a techno grouch. If there's an opposite of an early adopter, that would be me. So I apologize if this question is too basic. I have a couple of them. First one, you mentioned about Wi-Fi networks and not be on a secured one, and I'd heard that a long time ago. What about using your cell phone as a hotspot? And what, security issues could you have with that or not? And the second, and I never even thought about this, usually most people go through like the iTunes to get their latest app on their phone, but if you're going elsewhere to get an app, like I recently downloaded an app to help transfer voicemails from my old phone to my computer because I was about to migrate to the next iPhone. It never even crossed my mind to check how would that app be secure on my computer. It never even dawned on me. So how would you be able to check when you're downloading an app if it's secure in some way, been tested to be secure?
And the question is for anyone
Anybody
who wants to answer it, and I think Marc wants to start, please.
As far as the cellular network, that's the safest way to go? Hotspot. The reason being is, like, for example, we were asking about the cryptography, the single sign-on. I'll never be a fan of that, simply because, with Wi-Fi, it's so easy to break. We can get the most expensive Wi-Fi hotspot, but all I have to do is put in a hotspot that's got a little bit more power. People will start trying to log on to it. I've got their credentials. Doesn't matter the cryptography level. If you're logging on through your cellular network, like the hotspot, it triangulates through 3 separate towers. And so, like when I do penetration testing before I came to the college, that was one of the things we always hated because you have to get all 3 towers in order to get through that. So you're automatically a lot more secure going through that. As far as the apps and downloading, the big thing is if you transfer it to computer, you should scan that computer immediately. I recommend using 2 antiviruses. One weakness a lot of people do is they buy they get free antivirus, AVG and things like that. And you got to remember there's never anything that's free. They all open up certain ports for adware and sell that information. So like when I was doing penetration testing, that's the first thing you do is, because those are publicly listed, a port is basically like opening a window in your house and expecting no one to crawl through. So the antivirus will never scan those ports. So that was an easy point of entry. I always have a paid antivirus. If you have a smart device, you should have paid antivirus on it, and you should be scanning it constantly. If you download an app, you should be scanning it. People say, well, I've got a Macintosh, I'm more secure. I've got Linux, I'm more secure. That's absolutely not true. If you take a 10-year average by distribution, in other words, Windows has over 80% of the market. If you distribute it evenly, had Microsoft, Macs, Linux, exact number of distributions, they're within 0.5% as far as malware infections. Android devices, she was mentioning, are dangerous. There's actually more malware now for an Android device than for Windows systems, actually. But I would automatically scan before opening it on a computer. And I've used 2. You can use a paid antivirus version. If you're on a Windows system, you can download something like Windows Defender. I always scan twice because, like I said earlier, you have probably 55% of your malware out there. They may not have signatures. So by getting more than one, you get 2 different eyes on the prize, basically. So did I answer your question?
Do you recommend some paid antivirus softwares to consider?
I always prefer the larger ones, Symantec, Trend Micro,
Norton.
McAfee.
Okay.
Symantec is Norton. The reason being is antivirus operates by signatures. In other words, they have had to have seen the malware to write a signature to look for that. And the larger companies have more people. Those 3 companies, on average, have twice as many more engineers writing signatures than a company like AVG or something like that. And if you look at it side by side, they're all pretty much similar as far as their detection capabilities. It's just how many the resources they can throw at detection. So,
Great. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Kevin? Yes, please.
I just wanted to say, again, from more of a human rather than a technical standpoint too, is a lot of people don't think about this first, but I mean, Google and Bing and those types of search engines are an incredible resource. So if you are looking at an app that's not available in the App Store, there's nothing wrong with going into Google and putting in the name of the app and security vulnerability. Because it may be that someone's already discovered something. And so that may be free information on the internet that would take you 2 seconds to find. So don't forget to use that as a resource as well.
Thank you. Ben, board member.
I have 2 questions. The first one I'll pose to Mr. Baker. The second one I'll pose to Mr. McNulty. Mr. Baker, can you speak to military security or to any level that you know of as far as what is our government doing, considering so much of that is now online? What is our government doing to keep those things secure that are very desirable to hackers? And Mr. McNulty, I'm sure a lot of us will be leaving today and thinking about companies that we could call to come in and do security on our computers, or maybe even local merchants here that we can hire to be having watch our computers and back up our computers. Being that you deal heavily in this industry, what can all of us as consumers look for, since there are so many IT firms in town, everywhere you go? Good things for us to look for, to picking out the good ones, to finding qualified IT and security people. So first to Mr. Baker.
Obviously, with the government, we've had a lot of data breaches reported. The model the government has followed in the past was a 3-year certification process, so all systems operating have to be recertified every 3 years as far as their security qualifications, making sure things are in there. The problem is that model's failed, and they've pretty much recognized that. The military is leading right now. They're transitioning. They're transitioning on 2 different phases. There's an organization, and I work with them as well, the SANS Institute, who does a lot of the cybersecurity training. They have a cyber defender program. The military works with them, and what they're doing is they take people in the cybersecurity specialties, all 5 branches of services. Cyber defender program is an 8-week program. The courses are taught on the master's level. They take a class over 6 days, over 5 days. They do 60 hours of training. That weekend, they take their certification exam, then they do the next one, and they have to go through all 8 weeks before they get there. So to make sure that the people have the top training as far as possible, but as far as how are they defending the networks, what they're doing is they're transitioning to the same model I talked about earlier, assuming the network's already infiltrated. They're developing hunt team methodology, where they're developing teams to actually start looking in the network for attackers and defenders. I've talked to some people. I came from the Panhandle up at Herbert Field with special operations. And then the other thing is looking at most of your traditional defenses. You set up perimeter, trying to, as far as inbound, keeping people inbound, but they're starting to work more robustly on the outbound filtering, making sure stuff isn't taken out of the network. So that's how the government's handling it at this point. So the military is leading with that effort. So.
Just an interesting take on the military. The military special operations and military intelligence, as well as law enforcement agencies, are now making very interesting and robust use of social networks for intelligence gathering. So you may remember a while back the riots in London. Police actually looters aren't the brightest people in the world. And so a lot of them were taking selfies of themselves looting and posting them on Twitter. And so they were just going through Twitter and picking everybody up. They had a whole shopping list. So it's interesting that they're making use of that. As far as companies to deal with, one thing that you should do whenever you're looking for any vendor, really, but especially something in this area that's sensitive, when you have a meeting with that company, frequently the company's going there thinking it's a pitch meeting, right? You should go there thinking it's an interview, right? You should not be afraid to ask tough questions. So give them a scenario that, give them say our network's been breached. We come in the morning and we figure out somebody's breached our network. What are you going to do? Let them explain the process to you. And you won't know the entire process. You won't even know whether or not they're actually right, but you'll have a sense of how comfortable they are with the information. If they can say, well, we do this, and this, and in order with no hesitation, you know that they understand the problem. And don't be afraid to ask for and check references. It's something that we do in hiring an employee, yet we don't go through. We're not nearly as thorough in hiring a vendor as we are when we're hiring an employee. But it's the same end result as far as work being produced for you. So ask for references, ask questions in an interview style format. And ask for recommendations from other business owners of people that they've worked with before. But make sure if you have a particular security concern that you're talking to people about that specialty, because in security, there are all kinds of specialties. And somebody who's a specialist in network security may not be as up on some of the database protection systems. So, you want to make sure that if you have particular concerns, you're talking to people who specialize in those particular areas.
Thank you.
My name is Mike Hamrick, and I am a member. I'm interested in your comments on online banking and your comfort level, not on a cell phone, but on a home computer. Including, if you don't mind, whether you personally conduct online banking through your home computer, and whether the remember me on this computer, checking the box substantially increases the risk of dealing with that. And my second question, if you don't mind, yes or no, is there a chance in the world Hillary was not hacked?
Okay, so is that question directed at anyone in particular? Who wants to answer that? And I'm going to ask that your answers be brief, please, so we can get to more questions. Anybody? Okay, let's go.
I'll start with the second one. She was definitely hacked. There's no way that computer wasn't known. There's just too many people too known as far as personal lives and things like that. But as far as online banking, I do online banking, but I'm paranoid. It's the nature of my field. I actually do it. I don't use my home computer. I use my cell phone on cellular network, because in penetration testing, I know the only way I'm going to get in that device is going through 3 separate cell towers. I won't use it on wireless. And after I do online banking, again, my business, I went to my first class. They said after 3 years in the business, you'll be notably paranoid. I am. I do online banking. I use a cellular network, and then I do a factory reset on my phone. Because everything you do on a phone, on a Windows device, on a Macintosh, saves between 3 and 7 entries, creates 3 and 7 copies in your registry. So I've created a copy of everything in my banking when I do it. So again, I do it, but then I wipe my phone with a factory reset. So as far as checking the box, that's the worst thing in the world you can do. That's what we call a hacker's dream. And every hacker in the world thanks you if you click that box. So.
Mr. Barnaby.
I'm Mark Barnaby, and I am a member of Tiger Bay. I have a comment and a question. I was on vacation this past summer, and my bonus daughter took a picture when we were in Wyoming. The interesting thing was we weren't in Wyoming. We were in a plane flying over Wyoming, but the phone actually identified the fact we were over some town in Wyoming, which I've never seen. If you are hacked, what should you do? Once you find out you're hacked, I guess, is probably the better question.
And the question is for anyone who would like to answer it.
So I'll let the IT people talk about the technicalities of desktop and whatever, but if you find out that one of your social media accounts has been hacked, which is a common thing, especially on Facebook, the very first thing you do is change your password. And we're talking about all these sophisticated biometrics and password and cryptography and algorithm. The weak point is still you. Okay, so make passwords robust. A lot of people will suggest passwords that have a special character, an uppercase, a lowercase, a number, and then what invariably happens is you can't remember that, so you write it down, and there you obviate the entire point of having the password. So the longer a password is, the harder it is to guess. If you do something like, you'll never remember that strong password, but if you did electric unicorn stapler, you already remember it, right? And it's going to be hard to crack because it's a very long password. So, the best diet is whichever one you'll stick to. The best password scheme is whichever one you can remember without writing down.
Great advice. Anyone else have any comments? Okay.
Your question is how do you respond if you've been hacked? The best assumption is always to assume you've been hacked. So that if you do find out you've been hacked, you're not necessarily reacting. You've already taken proactive measures. For example, my wife and I, again, it's the nature of my business to be paranoid. We've gone to the bank and they've issued us a second checking account when we go to the store. We sit in the parking lot, we transfer money into that account, we go in and spend that money, but if that card was ever hacked, that's the most they could ever get. When I travel, I contact the credit card companies. Every major credit card company will issue a one-time, what they call a one-time travel card. For example, if your limit's, just arbitrarily 2,000 and you think you're only going to need 500, have a card issued with 500. That's the most they can get, and that card expires. And I'm taking a trip here in a few months, and we'll have a card issued that has a 6-day lifespan. In the 6 days, that card's gone. So, we proactively assume we've been hacked so that if we are hacked, there's a limitation to what they can get. So.
Great. Okay. Miss Bailey. You are next.
Servia Bailey, and I am a member. My question is for Kevin, and I notice you keep saying it's usually our fault because I know you don't do passwords correctly, and we always want to put something in that we'll remember. But my issue came in, I went to the hospital for a procedure, and we were going over my medical history, and the young lady says, "Oh, you're so young. You had 2 hip replacements?" And I thought, no. And she says, "Well, you don't look 77. Well, there was this, and I have nothing against anyone who's 77. I just have a while to get there. And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And she says, "Well, there's someone had my social security number, my address, and some of my medical history, but it had in there that I had 2 hip replacements." And we did some research, and they actually found out who the lady was who had the hip replacement and everything. And it actually had, the common denominator was her son. He actually worked in some medical facility. And I was being charged for these hip replacements. The problem that I have is that when you do find out that you've been hacked or your information has been stolen, the person who has been hacked or had this information, we're treated like we did it. You're not the victim. And I had to prove that I wasn't the 77-year-old patient. And it was not a pleasing thing to go through. But I mean, eventually it was okay, and we got it taken care of, and the hospital took off all the charges. But what happens, when are we going to catch up with the criminals as far as the technology part where they can be prosecuted? It's kind of when white collar crime came in, it took a while for us to catch up to these criminals so they can actually be prosecuted. When do you think we're going to catch up where they can actually be prosecuted? Because I don't think they really care at this point.
Okay, so who'd like to take that one? Please.
Sorry.
Actually, our son in California, his identity was stolen, okay, which is pretty similar to what happened to you. It took him, first of all, 6 months to realize that it had been stolen. And he would see these charges on the credit card, very small amounts, kind of like flying under the radars, so to speak. So finally, he went to the bank and asked them about those charges. And like I said, it took him 6 months to find out that his identity was stolen. And to do anything about it, how to go about, what you need to do when something like that happens, it's not easy. It's very frustrating, very time-consuming. Like you said, you are the victim, and yet you are the one who's viewed as the perpetrator. Okay, one of the things which happened actually with me was a long time ago. I got a letter from AT&T saying that there was this all the information about employees who had left the company. It had been stored with a third party, and that storage had been broken into, and so it's very possible that my identity had been stolen. And so for 1 year, they offered that, I could go with any one of those 3 companies, Experian, or, Transamerica and all that, and make sure that I'm covered, that every time there is a transaction where my name or my address or my social security number is used, I'm made aware of it. So I can check whether it was legit or whether it was something else. And I was like, if I was in that business and I had somebody else's social security number, I would wait over a year before I did anything with it, So since then, I have that coverage. Now there is LifeLock, which also, I don't work for LifeLock, okay, but they offer that also, but they go one step beyond. They said if something like this happens to you, they will take over and they will do the follow-up for you. But of course, it's at a cost, and I have not subscribed to that as yet, but that's an option. But I do like the idea of what Marc said about getting a limited period kind of credit card, temporary credit card with the upper limit as to how much can be spent, and because then if your identity is stolen, you're covered. But again, I would not do any online banking through my cell phone, even though I'm going to a cellular network versus a Wi-Fi. I'm just, like Marc said, paranoid, but I'm kind of paranoid in a different way. Okay, but yes, it's a big hassle, and you need that. This is like buying insurance. Okay, so if you have coverage with one of these three companies who monitor and track your personal data, that helps.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Kevin, you had a quick thing?
Just real quick.
Because we are out of time, but please,
Okay.
I'm sure it's important.
Just real quick, to answer your question, Christina, about when police are going to catch up, there was a headline in the Herald a couple days ago, 7 of 17 murders so far this year have no arrests. You're asking a bigger question than cybersecurity. The point is we don't have enough police officers. So we need to take care of that problem before we can take care of that problem.
Okay, and so that concludes our program today. I want to remind you about our joint program with the Lakewood Ranch Business Alliance, and that will be October 21st at the Polo Club, the FET Ballroom. It is going to be a really large event, so if you're going, please send in your RSVPs. The next time we will meet in this room is December the 3rd. We do not have a November meeting, but we'll see you all then, December 3rd. Thank you for being here. Oh, I'm so sorry. We're not ready. We have a prize to award. Mr. Teitelbaum, please tell us who had the most engaging question.
Mike Hambrick.
Mike Hamrick, come up and get your cookies. Thank you. Please wear this when you come, and here you go. Enjoy these. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.